How to apply wood stain like a pro. This video will show you how to apply wood stain properly. Getting a nice finish when staining wood can look challenging, but it is very easy in reality. This guide will help you learn all you need to know about staining wood. The first step is to choose your stain that you are going to use. When you are staining, one of the first things you need to do is decide on what color stain you would like to work with. Try out a sample of colors on the rough timber piece and pick the finish that you like the most. How to prepare the wood. Once you are done with picking the color, you need to then prepare the wood piece that you plan on staining. You want to make sure that your wood piece is prepared. If you plan on sanding the wood, this should be done before you apply the stain. This is because if you were to sand your wood after staining, you will just remove the stain and make it patchy. Also make sure that the wood is clean and does not have any dust or residue that might stick onto the stain. Also make sure you remove all the unnecessary marks as well. After dusting everything off completely, it's time to start applying the stain.
After you have selected your wood stain and prepared your wood, the next step is to apply the stain on the wood piece. Here are a few easy steps that can make sure you achieve a perfect finish every time. Step 1. Stir the can properly. The first thing you need to do when you get your wood stain is to shake it well. This is because the pigment residue collects at the bottom when sat idle for a while. Simply use a stick or brush that reaches the bottom of the can. Give the stain can a good stir, making sure that you get rid of all the residue and the stain itself mixes well overall. A good tip is to stir every once in a while to make sure you apply the wood stain in the same color. If you do not do so, you will notice that the color of your wood stain will darken by the time you reach the end of your stain can. Step 2. Transfer it to your choice of tray. If you plan on using a rag for wood stain application, transfer your wood stain from its container into a nice big tin where you can easily dip your rag without ruining your hands. The tin should also be big enough for you to use the stain comfortably. If you plan on using a brush or a roller, transfer it to respective tray similarly. After transferring, make sure you stir the product again just to be sure. However, it's best not to put all the stain in at once and only transfer as much as you need. The more the stain is exposed to the air, the more it will start drying and reduce in quality. Step 3. Applying the stain. Applying the stain is very straightforward. Simply apply a small amount to your brush or rag and begin to apply it to your chosen surface, making sure to try and get an even coat. Try not to get a lot on the edges, otherwise your edges will darken in color as compared to the middle. The best way to apply the stain is first go over with a brush, and then go at it again with a rag. Also, make sure you use small, but light movements. The stain has a tendency to flick if heavy movements are used, staining the surrounding elements as well.
Step 4. Wipe the excess off. Once you have applied the stain with a brush, use a rag to wipe all the excess off. This will ensure an even distribution of paint stain in all directions. The stain job will look neater, cleaner and dry much quickly as compared to just using the brush alone. One more trick is to make sure that the rag is not wet. If you feel that the rag has absorbed too much stain, get a drier rag and continue wiping the excess off. Use the wet rag to apply more stain in other wood sections, such as for use on the sides of the piece. Additional note: when you are applying the stain, make sure your task at hand has your full attention. Do not stop halfway and start talking to someone on a phone call or walk away to get something else. You want to finish with the job first. Otherwise, you will notice that the layer you left before you left the workspace will become noticeably darker. Finish the section before you attend to the other issues. Another thing to do before applying the stain is to make sure that your wood is exactly in the position and shape that you need. For example, if there are some gaps in the wood, use a wood putty to fill up the gaps. Also, once the stain has dried up, make sure you give the wood piece you stained a good dust off. When the wood stain is dried up, it's ready for the next step: applying sanding sealer to the stained wood. But before that, let us understand what is sanding sealer. What does sanding sealer do? Sanding sealers help fill up wood pores, acts as a base coat, enable you to paint on time, and it makes the sanding process easy. If used, the sanding sealer is often applied before the topcoat is used. Majorly, the properties of these products help fill up loopholes and porous parts of the wood. This is achievable given how the soupy properties occupy the vacant pores in the wood. The use of this product helps wood makers get the best topcoat possible. Apply sanding sealer by using brush or roller or a spray. Sanding sealer is only applied as a base coat and should be lightly sanded after drying to remove any fuzz and minor finish imperfections. Use fine sandpaper, at least 200 grit, and do not sand through the sealer. If you do sand through the sealer, reapply sealer and lightly sand again. After all is done, wait to dry after applying a proper top coat or polyurethane top coat. Additional info. Make sure that the sanding sealer and the clear gloss lacquer or polyurethane top coat are compatible with your sanding sealer. The last and final step is applying a wood varnish, clear gloss lacquer or a polyurethane top coat. First of all, stir, never shake, a can of polyurethane. Why? Shaking a can of polyurethane will introduce numerous bubbles into the product that will show up in your final finish. Instead, just stir the product gently but thoroughly before each use. Apply the finish in a clean, well-ventilated area. Polyurethane takes hours, not minutes, to dry. That's a lot of time for dust to settle or bugs to land on the surface, marring the final product. Both water-based and oil-based products give off strong fumes as they dry, although oil-based is decidedly worse, so proper ventilation is a must. Just don't finish your work outdoors, where you can't control dust, bugs, and other flying finish ruiners. It's best to apply polyurethane to flat, as in level, surfaces so the finish can self-level and is less likely to drip. When applying polyurethane on vertical surfaces, you may experience drips or runs. Minimize this problem by applying thinner coats or by switching from standard brush-on poly to a wipe-on or spray finish, both of which can be applied in very thin coats. If you end up with runs or drips, try to sand them out when sanding between coats, or carefully remove them with a sharp razor blade, followed by sanding to feather in the blemish. As you're finishing each fresh coat during application, check your work with a bright side light. Crouch down so you see the light reflecting off of the surface. This highlights imperfections, such as bumps, bubbles, ugly brush marks, and spots that you simply missed or where the finish is too light. You can fix these problems when the finish is still wet but not once it starts to set up. Once again, follow the given steps above to apply the clear varnish or top coat on your wood. Make sure you put plenty of varnish on the paint. Start with the center and spread off everything at the edges. Do not use a rag for applying clear varnish, because varnish is a lot stickier and you don't want it getting on your hands. Make sure to check for any misses that you might have made. Let the varnish dry. Once the varnish has dried, your wood piece is done. Pat yourself on the back for a job well done.